Hi, everyone, and welcome to our virtual road trip webinar series. I'm Molly Berry with Asphalt Testing Solutions and Engineering, and it's my pleasure to welcome you on board today as we take a trip into the future of automation. We're joined by Stacy Glidden and Tanya Nash, who will discuss the implementation and adoption of automation and new technologies in our industry. Before I introduce them, just a reminder, your attendee controls are at the bottom of your screen. You are in listen-only mode, but if you'd like to join the conversation later, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you. You can type in questions and comments in your Q&A box at any time as well. Stacy Glidden is the Materials Technology Manager at Construction Resources Management, Inc., a Walbeck Group company. She has worked in the asphalt industry for 20 years and is a member of the FHWA Asphalt Pavement and Materials Technical Feedback Group, AAPT, Wisconsin Highway Research Program Technical Oversight Committee, and the Wisconsin DOT Technical Team. Tanya Nash is the pavement materials engineer here at ATS and has worked in the industry for 17 years. She serves on multiple NCHRP panels, the AMAC Executive Committee, and is the Vice Chair for NAPA's Council for Engineering Research and Sustainability. Thank you again for joining us today, wherever you may be, and we now invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy your 60-minute trip to Wisconsin.
Thank you for the introduction, Molly. Welcome, everybody, and just want to tell Molly and Tanya, thank you for the invite to come and speak with you all today. It's a topic that I really enjoy speaking about and learning about, and it's innovation and automation, specifically in the asphalt industry, and the challenges and opportunities that we have when we innovate and automate within our industry. So just a brief outline of what I'm going to be going over today. So we'll talk about what is innovation and automation and define those. We'll talk about asphalt binder sampling and testing automation, aggregate sampling and testing automation, asphalt mix sampling and testing automation, and round it out with asphalt paving automation. So, and then we'll talk about the challenges and opportunities involved when we automate within our industry. So what is innovation? Innovation really is about staying relevant. Organizations need to be successful, they need to innovate. Otherwise, they could end up a failure. So there's lots of companies that haven't innovated. You know, take a look at Blockbuster. They didn't innovate as the times changed. And we're really on the edge of some major changes coming down the road in our industry. You know, the workforce is becoming increasingly a challenge. So we really need to innovate, stay relevant. We need to be able to adapt to change. And then we also have to focus on the question, not the solution. So what is it that we're trying to innovate? So we may want to make people safer. So how do we do that? And we can figure out ways to do that through automating our systems. So go through a couple innovation examples, some that have come out, you know, in the last 10, 15, 20 years. Marshall is in and of itself an innovation, Marshall Mix Designs. And with SuperPave, we got the gyratory. And that is a great example of an innovation of going from what was an acceptable way of doing a mix design to what is really showing itself out to be a better way to get our materials to perform the way we would expect. So that's just an example of innovation on the mix design side. An example of innovation on the binder side would be when we went from using G-Star Sign Delta to Massacre. So we were evaluating our binders for elastic recovery, and we had no way to show that they had recovery. We kind of sort of used the phase angle to do it, but it wasn't, you know, a great way to do it. We often found ourselves doing elastic recovery and other tests in spite of having the phase angle. So multiple stress creep recovery allowed us to innovate past using phase angle and really get into something that showed the recovery properties and the elasticity properties of the binder itself. So this is an example of a lab innovation at the binder level. Another great example of innovation is how we extract our asphalt binders. So there's been a lot of work in this area, especially in the last few years. And so with this example, we used to use reflux, and that test took over 24 hours. There was a lot of exposure to chemicals for the technician when they were doing reflux. And it was just incredibly hands-on and time-consuming. So we moved to the centrifuge, and there was still some challenges there, still lots of hands-on time, but we could do it in a lot less time. It didn't take overnight like the reflux did. And we were able to use chemicals that were they were more environmentally friendly, and also from a health and safety perspective, better for the employees. So that's another example of innovation where we were able to reduce time, take out some of the technician time and make it more automated. And then we also were able to make that process safer by moving to centrifuge. So next I want to just talk about automation. So what is automation? Just from my perspective, it's any time that you reduce human intervention in a process. And human intervention is reduced by predetermining decision criteria and related actions and making those predetermined by machines. So the machines end up doing the processes instead of the people. And that's how I define automation in the context of this presentation. So you can see in this picture here where they're building cars, there's no humans anywhere in this picture because these cars and this part of the process are completely built by machines. So that's a completely automated section of that process. So how can we apply that automation technology to our industry? Well, starting with asphalt binder at our terminals, you can do auto sampling. So there are auto sampler setups that can be used at our asphalt terminals. And these are in use in a lot of industries where they're auto sampling their materials. There's pretty standard products, and really no reason for us to not be taking advantage of taking out the human error. So typically what happens is they'll train a truck driver to take a sample about halfway through the truck loading. And we're expecting that person to make sure the line is cleared, make sure they're getting a representative sample, and making sure they're labeling it correctly and getting all these steps done in this process. And you could completely eliminate all of that variability by having an auto sampler. So this is really, like I said, this is being used in many, many industries. They're relatively plug and play systems, and it takes out a lot of the variability in the process. And then taking that to the next step, Anton Par, and I don't know if there's other rheology companies out there that are working on this kind of thing or not, but they have an automated asphalt binder testing equipment. So they can actually take the sample that was automatically sampled and test it. So it would go right into this machine that they made, and it would do all the processing, no human intervention needed, from sampling to testing to results. You could absolutely know what your product is. One of the great things about this type of technology is because it doesn't require human intervention, you can test any time of the day and night without staffing your lab. So, and you can also test more frequently because once again, you have to be concerned about your technician time being taken up doing internal quality control. You can just have all of your internal quality control automated by adding this kind of system onto your asphalt binder terminal. So previously I was talking about reflux and then also centrifuge, and this is kind of the next generation in that process. This is a fully automated system that does automated extraction and recovery of the asphalt binder. There's a couple other pieces in here. So on the far left is the HMA extraction system. So you literally take your sample, put it in there. It works like a washing machine, washes the asphalt binder off of the aggregate. The next piece there is crumb rubber extraction. So that's kind of a little separate, but if you have material with crumb rubber in it, you can use that part of the setup to do the crumb rubber extractions. After it gets extracted, whether on the HMA or the crumb rubber, you can send it directly to the rotovap recovery. So the great thing about this is it's a single unit, one piece. What we would do in the past is we take the centrifuge material and take it to a separate machine, which the rotovap is a separate machine still in one of our labs. and do the extraction process there. Once again, exposure to chemicals to the technician. This is a fully automated single system setup, so we can go from extraction to recovery. And it's just a really great innovation, and it automates the entire system, and you can do your extraction recovery in probably about 2 to 3 hours. And the technician time it saves, and from a safety perspective, it's just a great piece of equipment to have in your lab. So talking about out in production in the field a little bit more, here's some examples of aggregate sampling and testing that have been automated. So in these setups, you can see this one's right on the belt. Swipe, the one on the left is right on the belt, and it's swiping the material, pulling it off, and then you can get systems that dry the aggregate for you, shake it out into its fractions, and so you're automatically testing that your aggregate production processes are working correctly. And you can, once again, you can test more frequently because you're not dealing with the limitation of how much time people have to actually do that testing. And your accuracy should go up because you've removed the human variable, which we can train our technicians and they can be great technicians, but human variability definitely causes errors sometimes, especially in our aggregate gradations and how those come out. So these are another great example. These things, can be purchased, and just a great addition to any aggregate sampling and testing that somebody has going on. And then, of course, you got to take that one step further. This is a completely automated aggregate testing lab. So the aggregate samples get brought in here, and they are 100% processed through automated systems. So this is the robot arm taking them through from the screens, getting them dried, and doing all the aggregate processing that you need for your aggregate testing. So this is pretty advanced, but it's just an example of something that somebody's doing. And so thinking about how we can start to automate these processes is beneficial to our industry, because as we talked about before, being innovative is about survival. It's about being on the front edge of what's going on and making sure that we're staying relevant. Getting into HMA, these truck sampling arms, once again, these are widely available and can be purchased. We actually put them on all of our asphalt plants over the last couple of years. Really getting away from people getting into the back of trucks was a big safety issue for us, from the fact of just being on top of the hot asphalt up to, having trucks drive away with people in the back of them. There's just a lot of safety issues when you're putting a person in the back of a truck with mix that's over 300 degrees. There's just so many variables, and once again, you can train every technician, and you can have the best truck drivers, but people make mistakes, whether they're because they're tired or they just forgot that day. People do make mistakes, and with not putting the technician in the back of the truck, whatever mistakes get made, we're fairly certain they won't be as detrimental as if somebody was in the back of the truck on that 300-degree asphalt. So this has been a great thing that we've been able to implement internally, and we've had a lot of success with it. So as always, taking it one step further, so we're sampling out of the back of a truck. So now let's talk about just automatically sampling at loadout. Like, why are we waiting for this material to get to the truck to get a sample? There are automations out there that can take these kind of swipes for us right when the truck material is loading out. So if you imagine that stream that looks like aggregate is actually asphalt, we could set that up and use that for asphalt mix. And we could, once again, we could sample more frequently. We wouldn't have to be concerned about the consistency of the sampling, because even with the sampling arms, you still have a human taking that sample, and they're using their perception and what they see to get the sample that's representative. By using an automated sampling at loadout, you completely take away that human perception. It's exactly what the material is. Nobody's getting involved with the actual sampling of it. So something that, as far as I know, is not available yet would be, let's say we took that sample from the haul truck and we were able to deposit it into an ignition oven. From there, the aggregates got delivered to an automated gradation system. You could get your asphalt content and your aggregate gradation automatically reported. So when you talk about giving your customer what you want, and specifically in the instance of the DOT, this is exactly the type of information that they want, knowing that everything that was done was completely automated. There was no human error involved, and they are getting the actual absolute asphalt content and aggregate gradation that is actually in the material without any chance of human error. So that could be a pretty powerful innovation if people start adopting it and thinking about how we can automate our field labs. So then moving on to the field, there's lots of great innovative things that are coming out for the field side of asphalt mix and asphalt paving. Intelligent compaction, where your roller operator is being told where they've rolled and how much they've rolled. There's some that claim that they can tell what kind of density you're getting. Those things are still, I would say, under review, but they show a lot of promise, and that the roller operator could literally see a map and know exactly what the compaction level was everywhere they had been. So intelligent compaction has a lot of opportunities, and it's one of those things that, once again, is readily available. We've used it with some of our roller operators, from senior roller operators to new roller operators. Night paving is a great tool for night paving, because even our best roller operators struggle to know where they've been and how many times they've passed over an area in the dark. It gets really complicated when you're out on a night job. So intelligent compaction is really great innovation that's available now that we could really take advantage of to make our pavements last longer by ensuring we have adequate density. And then the next step of this is autonomous rollers. So the idea being that they could actually even connect to the paver. So the paver, the rollers, all these things start talking to each other, and it gets really interesting very quickly. If the paver can tell the roller what temperature the material is going down at, the roller knows what temperature the material is and whether it should go on it or not. It already knows how many times it's been somewhere, and it's able to tell what the density is as it's going. These are some really interesting innovations. And one thing to always think about is the safety aspect. You know, we're all concerned. We just had, Road Safety Awareness Week. Always concerned about our employees who are out on the road at risk simply from the traveling public, and how we can make it safer for them. And this is one way that we could potentially do that, especially if we had, if this is being operated on the side and has to be pre-programmed, then that person could just be in a safer location rather than being right out on the road. These are actual driverless mining trucks, and I find these really interesting. Obviously, they're in a huge mining site, but they are completely driverless. At this particular site, they've logged over 15 million miles last time I checked in on them. I think they've had one minor accident due to Wi-Fi going down. A truck hit another truck that was parked. These kind of innovations in quarry sites could be huge. Once again, getting people in safer locations, having our drivers take on tasks that are higher level would probably be part of that. But all these things are out there and available. So basically just trying to raise some awareness. There's lots of industries that are using automation in ways that we just aren't even thinking about yet. I just think we really need to open up our minds and think about how we can automate more in the asphalt industry. So next, I'm going to talk about kind of some of the challenges that we face when we talk about automation. So just this is kind of a psychological model. Some of you may have seen it before, but it's all about adoption, and marketing people use it to know like how sales are going to go. And you have your innovators here at the front end, and they're usually about the 2.5%. They're creating new ideas, materials, and processes, really on the cutting edge of everything that's going on. And then you have your early adopters. And within that, they're applying new ideas, and they want real world stuff. And they're improving them slowly, step by step, but they're willing to try new things that not everybody is quite bought onto yet. So, and then you have your early majority, which they're working with new ideas that have already been proven in the real world. And then obviously you have your late majority that will do it after it's fully established. And then you have laggards that won't do it until they have absolutely no choice. You've taken away every other tool and they have to move forward with the innovation. So really what I want you to do and take away from this is think about where you are in this graph, and think about maybe moving up. The asphalt industry could really use more innovators, early adopters, and even early majority people who are willing to take on these innovations when they come out and they've been proven. So just think about where you are on this. Think about where your company is and where you want them to be. So one thing I like to talk about, I'm going to talk about this chasm. And this one just illustrates a little bit more. But one of the challenges we have with automation is we hype it up. We talk about it, how great it's going to be. Oh, I can't wait to have automated rollers. It's just going to be the best thing in the world. And then we get them and realize there's all kinds of challenges. And so we get it to work, but it doesn't work as good as we had talked ourselves into thinking it would. And at that point, we can end up with this chasm where people stop adopting things. So I just put this out there as a warning, as this does happen. It's a very well-known psychological trait that people will see new things and try them and then hear that they're not perfect and won't even think about trying them. So, and I can say we ran into this even with our automated samplers. We got really excited about them at the beginning, and then we trialed it and it sat for a couple of years before it came back up again, and we decided this time we were actually gonna follow through with the project. So just watch out for those. It can delay innovation severely for a company if you end up not taking advantage of the things that are already out there simply because they're not 100% of what you want, because they're probably never going to be, but they're usually a lot better than what we already have. So another automation challenge is we have to think about is our workforce. If we're automating all these systems and automating all these processes, what does that mean for our workforce? How do we retrain them? How do we get them new skill sets? All of those things are questions that we have to ask and we have to think about. And it definitely is going to be a challenge. When we got our auto samplers for the trucks, all of our technicians had to be trained to use that auto sampler. And it wasn't a small task to get everybody up to speed. Just the thought process of how you get a representative sample using a sampling arm instead of a shovel. All those things really have to be thought through and very carefully considered how your workforce is going to adapt to the automation challenges. Another challenge that I've noticed with the industry is that the things that are made by our equipment manufacturers are not always scalable. So I feel like some of the automation and innovative tools that we buy don't scale with our other equipment. They're kind of black boxes that operate in their own little world. They have their own software package. So really challenge the manufacturers to make sure that the automation equipment that they're making is scalable, not a black box, that it can, connect with the software that we're using, whether that's a simple Microsoft Word package, any of our data systems. Astro has a new one coming out, and making sure that we can really scale all of this. So I'm going to move on now and talk about the opportunities. So I talked about the workforce being a challenge. So these statistics are maybe not totally up to date. It says, but 80% of construction firms report having a hard time filling positions. And I know, especially over the last year and even going into this season, we are struggling to find people, and not just qualified people, just people in general. The labor shortage is very real right now for not just our industry, for lots of industries. And so while we can be and should be concerned about our workforce and how we're going to train them, automating also gives us the opportunity to maybe not have to fill some roles that we already can't fill anyway, because we simply don't have the labor force that we need to fill them. So it's kind of an opportunity, but it also has to be balanced with the challenge of having more skilled workers who can work with the automated equipment and fix it, know how to take care of things. And probably higher cognitive level skills are going to be necessary for those kind of processes. You're going to need people who could analyze data at a deeper level for when the equipment maybe can't quite get there. So, but this is definitely an opportunity, if we automate things, to think about how that could affect our current labor shortage. So another opportunity of automation is quality. Giving the customer what they want, and they always want quality. So if we know where we've rolled and we know what the density is on every square foot of that pavement, and we can get them consistent density across the entire pavement, we know, research is showing us again and again, that we will provide a higher quality product that will last longer and be the best product that we can give to our customers. And there's lots of examples of that, whether it's the asphalt binder sampling that I talked about. Those things, just taking the human error out, we can provide a higher level of quality, and thinking about how we can do that, because that's really what our customer wants. And that's all of our customers, not just our DOT customers. That's our municipalities, FAA, if we're doing private work in parking lots. All of these automations will help all of our customers get a better quality product. And this is probably one of the topics that really makes me excited about automation. It's safety. So many things that we do, we just accept the risk working in the paving industry. We accept the risk of sampling hot asphalt binder. We accept the risk, excuse me, of sampling out of trucks. We accept the risk of working in live traffic while we're doing construction. And maybe it's time to say not anymore. Why do we continue to accept these risks that we know get people hurt? Like, we can do everything according to the SOP or BMP, whatever we have in place to keep everybody safe, but we can't control every step of that process. So doing everything we can to get our employees in spaces where they are safe, I think should drive automation. Like, every day we should be looking at what can we do with our processes to innovate and make them safer for our employees. How can we get them to a place where they don't have to be in live traffic? Maybe they're remote controlling it from an office building, whatever it is. I'm really passionate about safety and the employees, and I think automation is one way to really kind of take us to that next level, and really evaluate, do we have to continue to take these risks with all of the technology that we have available to us? And then the last thing I'll talk about for automation opportunities, feedback can be very quick. We saw the aggregate sampling. We can know very rapidly how our production processes are running. We can integrate our equipment. So like I was talking about, having your paver talking to your rollers, and then possibly talking to the trucks that are delivering the material. And so getting all that timing down, those could be some pretty powerful impacts on our industry. And they'll drive quality and they'll drive cost. So that's always something that we have to be thinking about. So integration of all of these things and how they all work together, that goes back to talking about the black boxes, insisting that the manufacturers come up with systems that work together, and understand that can be challenging, but I think having those conversations with them as contractors is essential. So next I have a short video. Where some employees are talking about their company culture. And so I just want you to listen to what they have to say, and think about, do you have a culture that creates innovation? Are you training your current and future employees? Are you ready to do all the things that it takes to innovate and automate, and creating the culture to get you there?
This company seems to strive to be on the forefront of technology. And not only is this company willing to spend money on technology, but they spend money on us employees. I mean, all the training. There's so much this company does for us too. And it's just, I can't wait to see what's next.
We want to be exceeding, excelling, and well above the minimum.
So are you ready? Are you ready to create a culture of innovation and adopt automation more quickly? Are you ready for the challenges of training your employees? Are you ready to take on everything that comes with keeping your employees safe and demanding a higher level of safety for everyone in your industry? So are you ready? And with that, I think Tanya's going to come on and take over.
I'm here. Thank you, Stacey. I like this topic. I really do. I think it's a well-needed discussion for people to have, and to see what's actually out there. Sometimes we got to get lost in our own day-to-day, and we think, this is the way it has to be done. But we lose sight of the fact that new things are still coming forward, and things are being worked on to try and get us into those different spaces of whether it's a safety thing or whether it's just a new and improved way to try and reduce all the variability that we have from human interaction with those samples. So I do have two questions for you. You talked a lot about the workforce and talked about some of the challenges that come with, trying to integrate both automation and the actual workforce itself. Putting an automation system into, for instance, your plant operations, or whether or not you integrate it into from the plant to the lab, it's not a short-term solution. It's kind of like that movement towards this is where we're going. And a lot of the workforce development committees that are around, they seem to be really focused on train your employees, train them to get more engagement, train them to be more engaged with the material and what they're doing, to gain the expertise. Do you feel like those are battling each other, or do they kind of go hand in hand?
I would say from my perspective, they go hand in hand. Like really having, it's great to have an employee who can shake out aggregate, but they could really be working on higher level cognitive tasks, like figuring out if there's problems with the system, really looking at the data and analyzing it. So I think having your employees be more engaged, like some of these things could help us get there, because they're taking out the repetitive tasks that maybe, drive people away from our industry even. So
are you thinking maybe the training should be geared more on interpretation of data, more of the, what is inherently happening, what are this set of data telling me about the material, rather than this is how you do the test.
Absolutely. Like we definitely have to train to do the test at this point, but we're always striving to have our employees understand what they're doing. Like, why are you getting this GMB? Why are you getting this GMM? What can I do to make a change, to fix whatever the problem is I'm seeing on the road? We're always trying to get to that next level. And I think this could give them more time and space to really get to that point where they can make smart decisions about the material that's going out the door.
Okay. The next question kind of ties right into that. So when you think of automation, you take out that human factor. I guess the big deal is you're taking out that variability. I mean, right now we have variability in every step that we do, right? We sample it, we split it down, we test it, or whether or not it goes out to the road, we produce it. It's even down to how we load the trucks, the amount of segregation we introduce, all the way through that process. But for the sake of sounding like, going back into the Terminator movies of allowing the machines to kind of take over and allowing the automation to kind of move forward, do you fear ever that we're going to lose those expertise that are, those hands-on people that you get some invaluable feedback, when a property goes off or unexpectedly, and it's kind of a funny thing, you usually go to the technicians or you go to the plant operators and you go, what did you see? What did what did the mix look like? Or what else happened? The more we remove the human factor out of that interaction, it seems like if something goes wrong and if the Wi-Fi goes down, then what happens? I mean, do we still have those humans that have those expertise to come back and do those tasks?
I think that's a really great question. And I would say that probably every industry who has gone through automating their systems has kind of dealt with some of those challenges. So I think like looking at them and figuring out how they've done it, I would argue that yes, we absolutely do go talk to the technician, we go talk to the plant foreman, but I would argue that the answers are in the data. There's something to be found that we're not seeing right now because we're not taking the time to look, because we're so busy running the plant, we're so busy doing the testing. There's just so many things that we aren't looking for, whether it's, did our moisture change up and down 0.2%, and how much was that a variable? The aggregates are drying out during the day. We just don't have the time and energy to track all of those things as much as we would if we automated systems. And then I was talking about a higher cognitive level of the staff and training them to look for different things. I think that's when you can get into that, and the employees can really get to understand the processes. I do kind of like the idea of touching stuff. Absolutely. Getting the feel for it, smell of it. It didn't smell right today. That's probably the problem. But I really think that driving towards automating these systems is just going to make us better.
Now, it's one thing for a contractor to really want to push the innovation and want that automation installed into their systems, and they're totally on board. For instance, with Walbeck Group, I know you guys really kind of push that level of trying to get those kind of systems online for either a safety factor or just a variability reduction. Do you find that you're getting a lot of pushback from the state or from the agencies in general for any of these types of innovations?
We haven't directly. I have talked to some federal people who have concerns with automated systems because what's in the black box is a question, which is a fair question. I think, that, goes back to transparency and making sure that they know. All of the automations and systems that we've been put in place up till this point, DOT has been willing to work with us. There hasn't necessarily been spec changes, staying within the spec, but they've been willing to put in if we needed something into the spec to allow for innovation to kind of work its way into our systems.
Okay. Do you know of any other states or contractors in different states that have kind of started pushing this direction?
I am not familiar with any of this.
Okay.
I would love to
'Cause
know.
I know you've always, you guys have always been on the front of this one, so I just didn't know if you had heard anything else going on going forward. But what made you guys as a company really want to push forward for this step? I mean, was there a turning moment where you go, you know, this is the right thing to do, this is where we want to be?
So I started with Wellbeck Group about 6 years ago, and my job was to start our research and development division. And so as part of that, my supervisor and I at the time really started talking about automation and different ways we could automate. We had a moisture meter on one of our plants that we were trying to get up and running and working with the plant. And we just we talked a lot about innovations and different ways that we could automate our processes. And so that's just become part of our R&D team's overall culture. Like, we're always looking for ways to improve our systems. And, you know, that doesn't always have to be automated things, but, you know, anything from, you know, improving our quality, improving our economics, all those things are just part of the culture at the Wellbeck Group. So that's really where it starts. That's why I like to talk about the psychological models even for it, because you got to get the culture right. The company culture has to be in a position where you're ready to really take on some of those things. And if you're not, you know, you got to get that right first.
Would you say it's fair to say that, how far out do you think that this will be an industry commonality to start moving a lot of the plants this direction, or a lot of the companies in this direction?
So just from my perception, we have a lot of late adopters in the asphalt industry. So even though a lot of these things are out there and available to be used, you know, then there's capital expenditures, things you have to think about. And I haven't seen a company yet really pick this up from a equipment standpoint and say, hey, we're going to figure this out. We're going to automate these labs and make this kind of a standard practice. I don't see it happening anytime soon. I don't have a really good answer for that at all. Tough one.
Kind of like a caveat to that, do you feel like that's the response to the, I don't want to say not mandated, but not the non-push from the federal side to investigate it on theirs end?
I think that would make a huge difference if there was federal funding to look at how automation can improve our processes. And quite honestly, especially from the density side, FHWA had a big push on density initiatives and getting densities up, and they trained everybody. Well, there's lots of automated tools out there that can help us ensure our densities are at, you know, 95+%. So, which should just kind of be an industry standard at this point, but we just aren't there.
Well, it sounds like you're ahead of the game. You're ahead of us all. You're in that early adopter type of portion of the curve. I don't see any questions currently on the Q&A portion of it. So, but Molly, I don't know if you have any extra questions for.
Well, I did have one question actually. Great presentation, Stacy. It's all just so interesting, and for me, being fairly new in the industry, it's exciting to see how some of these new technologies, you know, can be adopted during my time. The fully automated aggregate lab that you showed a picture of, have you been there? Have you seen that run? And what's that like? Do they have a person in there managing it, or you know, if something goes wrong?
I haven't seen it. I would love to see it.
I would too. I mean, that it's just so intriguing. And you know, like the questions Tanya asked, I always worry about the staffing, or are people going to lose their jobs? But I think you explained it so well when you said there's deeper cognitive tasks as opposed to the mundane, repetitive tasks, which are needed right now. But yeah, being able to dig deeper and have more fulfilling answers, I think, as to why a mix is running a certain way as opposed to just, jotting down the test results, I think is a really good thing. I don't see any other questions though. Any parting words of wisdom, Stacy or Tanya?
No, but Ann does have Ann just threw one in here. Says, great presentation. Have you done any ROI for all the automation instruments thus far? And I think the industry needs to see the numbers working long-term to adopt. That's a good point.
Yeah, so, and ROI, depending on what the automation is, obviously is measured in different ways. So like for the extraction and recovery systems that we have, those ROIs, we've done those internally and they are slam dunks. Like the time it takes to extract and recover material is a lot from a technician perspective. So those type of ROIs would be really impactful to have and to show to potential buyers. The ROI and the safety on the sampling arms from a financial perspective was a little trickier because we were looking at, from a safety perspective and what's the cost of having an employee get hurt in the back of a truck versus just, the ethical part of we're putting this person at risk. And so there's a lot to balance there when you look at it just, from the safety perspective. But I think even economically, you can make those kind of things. If you need to prove them economically, you still can, because there is a significant cost to an employee getting hurt, from the company side. And I always struggle to talk about employees and equating them with money, but there's a significant cost to somebody getting hurt. So anything we can do to keep people from getting hurt, whatever our motivations are, is a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Anne. That was a great question. And with that, we're going to wrap things up a little bit early, guys. Stacy, thanks again. Tanya, thank you for moderating the questions. And we'll see you guys all at the end of June. We're going to take a short hiatus, and we're going to go back to basics and learn about how a plant works and how a paver works. So you might have some employees who would really benefit from seeing the operations be explained to them process by process, step by step. So thanks again for joining us, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week.
Bye, guys.